taken a long time for me to get here, and this is a great moment. Thank you all for being here again. I wanted to start by reading to you a statement of philosophy of volunteerism that I just happened to write 15 years ago. I was an employee of Children and Families First, and my job was volunteer and intern placement manager. And I was also seeking a national certification in volunteer management. And I wrote this at that time. I have 60 years of volunteer experience and 32 as a volunteer administrator. Brief exposure to the corporate world taught me I am much more comfortable in the nonprofit environment working to fulfill the missions of organizations which strive to improve lives. Central to my work is serving others. I also value success, respect, equity, justice, responsibility, and empathy. I believe individuals can take opportunities to assist others for reasons other than financial gain. I help them do that. Advances in technology and communication have increased awareness and worldwide interdependence. Volunteerism on a grand or singular scale is increasingly important as we deal with consequences of natural disasters, wars, aggression, hunger, poverty, disease, unstable economies, and I didn't put it in then, but global warming. My passion comes from my belief in the likelihood of success. That may mean beating the odds against change in our communities by multiplying efforts through volunteers, or it may mean having a single volunteer whose contributions become more than expected. I'm buoyed through experiencing positive change in the culture of our agency, Children and Families First, vis-a-vis acceptance of volunteers and implementation of better volunteer program practices. My work is very exciting and rewarding. I enjoy the leadership I have found and flexibility and the opportunity for creativity. It is especially important that volunteer administration is maturing as a profession with formalized standards and ethics. Our volunteer department makes every attempt to mirror the work done in human resources and aspires to the highest standards. That was then. Now, this is my sermon for today. Volunteering and what it can mean. While at lunch a short time ago, a relatively new friend asked me which activities of the 5 organizations I currently volunteer for would I be willing to give up? Or which did I enjoy the most? Or which was my favorite? The questions arose out of our conversation about how busy we both are in retirement, and my comment that I'm ready to seriously consider cutting back on my many volunteer responsibilities. Don't laugh, Ann. As I considered what my answer would be, silence ensued, and we sat there for what seemed like a really long time, until I finally said, I don't really want to give up any of these organizations, none of them. The idea of separating myself from the caring, capable people, some of whom are in this room today, I've met and worked with over the last 4 years or longer, makes me very sad and unwilling to think about ending those relationships. My mother probably set a precedent for me as a volunteer. She had done a lot of volunteer work, but I think I may have taken that for granted. She was my Girl Scout leader, somehow knew most of my teachers, and was my Sunday school teacher as well as my chauffeur. Always there for me. I've been a volunteer almost my entire life. I began volunteering at age 14 when I became a server at our local Kiwanis Club dinners. I learned a few useful things about how to serve a meal, and I remember it being fun and how surprised I was that my service was actually appreciated by the members. It was utterly amazing to me. A year later, still too young to have a work permit, at least in Cleveland Heights, Ohio, where I lived, I joined with a friend in creating a 3-morning-a-week summer program for 6 young children in our neighborhood. The parents were pleased, and I learned that giving my time could provide something beneficial for other people. I loved being a helper. My friend and I weren't doing this alone. We were always under the watchful eyes of her mother, who had had some early childhood education experience. To our surprise, many years later, the program my friend and I had begun in 1949 had grown to become a licensed daycare in a nearby church and was attended by our own daughters, Amy is here, in the late 60s. After marriage and adopting our two daughters, I was able to stop working for a time and stay home to take care of our children. But staying home was never my forte. I wanted to be with people who had needs and could use assistance of a type that I would be able to provide. When we moved to Delaware in 1971, Amy was in kindergarten and Kristen would be the following year. Linden Hill was our brand new school, which opened the week we arrived. I found a niche there with the PTA as a library volunteer, classroom mom, and Girl Scout leader. It was a way to stay apprised of my children's school successes and where they might need help. It helped me learn about education and become an advocate for teachers and how hard they work every day. It taught me the importance of early intervention when a child could be identified as needing additional guidance. It challenged me to complete my education at UD, although that would wait another decade or so. And I learned the roles that were needed to be filled by volunteers, and I began looking to identify friends and neighbors I knew to fill those roles. During this time, I became a church school teacher and recruiter and volunteered in many other church-related activities by co-chairing a major festival, becoming a member of Session, being on the personnel committee, to name a few. As a teen, I had learned that it was fun to volunteer and that it could be appreciated by those benefiting. Once I got involved as an adult, I had a whole new education through my children's activities. But that doesn't quite seem to make up the difference I believe volunteering has made in my life. There is a spiritual component, particularly related to the UU principles. My employment experience with National Conference of Christians and Jews, NCCJ, taught me about training and managing volunteers for the Green Circle program, a scripted dialogue brought to classrooms of elementary-age children by our highly trained volunteer facilitators. The program's bottom line is to enhance children's understanding of the concept of empathy. While engaged in directing this and other youth programs, I learned about understanding, accepting, and appreciating the differences among individuals. That is where, to my knowledge, I encountered the first Unitarian Universalist of my life, arousing my curiosity. My spiritual life has always had a high degree of importance to me. While working for NCCJ, training our Delaware volunteers and others across the United States to do the Green Circle program, the overarching goal was for them to learn how to provide a non-judgmental atmosphere in classrooms when facilitating the program. That goal was such a comfortable one for me, and I learned during that time that some of my coworkers and volunteers were UUs and members of First Church. Eventually, that drew me to explore, and I became a member in 1998. And what I found when I became a UU was a non-judgmental environment. In fact, I have felt that I must always have been a Unitarian Universalist. I have volunteered in a number of ways at First Church. One of the most satisfying was my time co-chairing the Partner Church Committee. I didn't make the trips to Transylvania to visit our partner, but I hosted the minister when he came here for a visit, and those of us involved helped inform the congregation experientially about the Transylvanian culture. At about the same time, 1998, I became a CASA volunteer. CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate, serving the Family Court of Delaware. CASA volunteers are extensively trained individuals who become advocates for children in foster care. Once sworn in, a CASA becomes the voice of a child or children in the courtroom of family court at whatever hearings may occur. Over a 15-year period, I must have worked with maybe 36 children. But here's the thing. I was really fascinated throughout with my responsibility to do my own private investigations, to observe the child in its various settings, school, preschool, daycare, foster home, and during scheduled parental visits, as well as interview as many connected people as possible. I visited rehabs, prisons, schools in Philadelphia and Delaware, mental health facilities for parents and children, met parents in shopping centers in Baltimore and Washington. Before each court hearing, the CASA submits a report to the judge documenting their activities since the last hearing. Because I had served as a CASA in 2020, I received a phone call from a retired family court judge who was both a Unitarian and friend, taking on the leadership of the ILYA program, Independent Living for Young Adults. As many of you here know, ILYA originated at First U and assists youth aging out of foster care. My friend asked me to take on the role of communications liaison between the program and the State Division of Family Services, which oversees the Independent Living Program for the state of Delaware. I agreed, and after 3.5 years, I am training another ILYA colleague, who happens to be here, to collaborate with me and ultimately take on this responsibility. Some of you in this congregation work with ILYA, or you have in the recent past. It has been very satisfying to watch what seem like small successes in other groups become miracles for this population. Among those were the 2 college graduates this year, one from UD in civil engineering and the other from Delaware State. But that's not the extent of my UU Church involvement. In 2005, I signed the book here at Mill Creek and left my membership at first behind. My husband's health was noticeably failing at that time, and it became evident that if I was going to have any role in a church, it needed to be closer to home. Since 2010, however, when I rejoined First U, I have supported and participated in both, and I am unable or unwilling to give up the friends I have in North Wilmington or those here on Polly Drummond Hill Road. I began today with a question from my friend about which of my current volunteer roles I would most likely give up or which I favored the most. Reflecting again on what I derive from my volunteer efforts makes me think of my dear St. Michael's School and Nursery. St. Michael's is a 134-years old, an intercity facility for children 6 weeks through 4 years. I am proud to say I'm a Board of Directors member and serve on the Family and Community Engagement Committee. This committee is currently working concretely toward a more inclusive board by identifying parents of the school who are interested in membership on the Board of Directors, or at least in serving on our committee. My involvement began when I toured St. Michael's with a friend, and my first thought was, how might I volunteer here? I met the executive director who said, we'll figure it out. Thus, I became a volunteer. I was motivated by the facility itself, the bright-eyed, engaged children and teachers I saw in the classrooms and hallways, and 3 cheers, they had a library that needed attention. Brings a smile to my face when I think of the joy, and of course the tears, inevitable in such an inviting place to learn. My first job was to reorganize the library for easy storage as we anticipated room closures during the now almost complete over $6 million renovation and addition capital project. I love being present at the school, enjoying an activity or two and remembering when I was a classroom facilitator with Green Circle. My answer to the question remains, I don't want to give up any of the organizations entirely, not one, not any. Cutting back will help improve the quality of my work and time in general because there are not enough hours in any one day. And because I believe that anything worth doing is worth doing well, and each endeavor requires time. In church congregations, we say there are 3 ways to give. One is financially through pledging, another is sharing talents, For example, singing in the choir or playing a musical instrument, occasionally by contributing flowers or food you have grown or prepared from time to time, or preaching a sermon. And a third is giving time as a volunteer by serving as chair or a member of a committee, being a member of the Board of Trustees, providing much-needed time in the meadow to assist the keeping of our beautiful grounds, making them maintained and beautiful. What are your thoughts? How are you giving of yourself to others who need and will appreciate your time and effort? What volunteer work are you doing or have you done in the past? What volunteer roles do you have here at Mill Creek with other organizations and opportunities? Maybe you have the time to add another volunteer opportunity to your resume. Is there something out there that would give you the psychic reward or the challenge that I have felt over the years? In closing, I ask that each of us consider how we are giving to others. I certainly have enjoyed sharing with you. Thank you so much for listening. So be it.